So just a few weeks ago, 4 soldiers got into a Humvee. 3 of them are in a hospital and 1 of them is in a coffin. This young soldier is somebody who I knew. He left behind a young son, less than a year old, when he died. He left behind a wife and he left behind a unit. And I was never close friends with him. But I knew what he wanted to do in life. He wanted to become an NCO. He wanted to become a sergeant. He wanted to earn his stripes. And now he never will. I bring this to you because we all act as though we have all the time until eternity. But we do not. We have a very finite supply of time and we are wasting it every single day that we aren't making the good decisions which propel our lives forward. And that is what this call is about, boys. Today the call is about making decisions, because we all make decisions, but in the end it is our decisions that make us. So the first question is, well, what is a decision? Well, you've heard the word decision, but have you heard the word cis? Well, the thing is, you have. In the word scissor, you've heard the tailor used his scissors to cut through cloth, or you have heard the surgeon made an incision into the body. The word cis refers to cut. It is the Latin origin of that word. And when you make a decision, you are intentionally or unintentionally cutting off all the futures that you will not live as a result of that decision. Now, every time you make a decision, it's in the word, you are making a trade-off. Every time you make a decision, you are making a trade-off. And this is the first part of our decision-making framework. And this is what makes decision-making hard. If you had a clear good option and a clear bad option, then anybody could make that decision. But the hard decisions in life are always between 2 good options or 2 bad options. It is when it is not clear what to do next is when we get stuck and we waste time. That is what I'm going to show you today, is a clear framework which allows you to make the call. Make the risk-adjusted bets that compound over time and change your life for the better. And I'll tell you how I learned this step by step, so the information that I'm encoding in this video stay with you forever. But for me to accomplish this mission, something must happen. You must make a decision right now. You must make a trade-off right now. You must decide to trade your attention and your time to this lecture right now in order to get the best return on investment. So if you can make this trade, make this commitment to paying attention and spending your time here, then I will fulfill my end of the bargain. I will give you a framework which is so memorable and so useful and so practical that this will serve you from the time you're a teenager all the way to your deathbed, really. Because the framework which I'm giving you is just purely logical, purely reason-based, and the thing is, logic scales infinitely. And of course, it's not that I've just come up with this framework. I've borrowed and stolen and learned from some of the best minds in history to come up with this. And I'll give you a direct example to drive this home. I learned the first part of this framework from Thomas Sowell. And Thomas Sowell is an absolute gangster of American intellectual history. He's the kind of man who Jordan Peterson wishes he could have been. So Jordan Peterson came out into the stage, he was really cool and everything for all of like 4 years, and then his mind broke, and then now he's just a shill for foreign interests. But Thomas Sowell, he's 90 and he's still lucid. He's still a clear thinker. And some of his books, like Thomas Sowell was the nightmare of the left. He was the nightmare of the socialists. He was the nightmare of the communists, because he was well-reasoned, well-read, well-educated, and he was an African American. And the fact that the left believed in racial solidarity, and Thomas Sowell went against this, well, that was one of the reasons why they hated him so much. But either way, this video is not about Thomas Sowell, it is about decision making. So back we come to the first part of the decision making framework, which is to spell out your trade-offs, boys. And I learned this by doing. So the first big decision I made in life, like literally the first big decision I made in life, was already I was in my 20s. And this was to give up my progress in academia. I was already in the PhD program for biosciences. I was in a very prestigious PhD program for biomolecular and genetic sciences. And I gave this up. I gave up years of progress to join the military, which is a whole separate skill tree. And I wanted to do this for many years. I always studied military history. I always knew that this is something I wanted to do. And I also knew that I wasn't getting any younger. So it would have to be done now, or it would just get harder and harder to eventually do. And the thing which was keeping me back, I didn't spell it out. But once I spelled it out, I was like, okay, let's do this. the trade-off for joining the military was the demise and destruction of my academic career. That was the trade-off. But I wasn't afraid about that. That's something that I was willing to do that. The second thing was potential death. And I was actually willing to make that trade. I was like, well, what if I join the military and then we go to war and I die? See, the place which I was in life at that time, of course, I say this with a lot of casualness now, but the place that I was in life at that time, honestly, if I had a life of adventure and had a brotherhood and died on my feet fighting, I considered that to be a trade that I was willing to make. So that wasn't what scared me either. At least, I mean, of course, it's easier to say that when you're not in war, when you're not on the battlefield, it's easy to say that. But that wasn't what kept me from making that decision. What kept me, and to my horror and to my surprise, was that I was afraid of disappointing my parents. Like, that was the actual thing, that was the secret trade-off that I wasn't willing to make. So once I actually spelt out the trade, like, what am I going to lose? What will happen as a result of making this decision? And one of the things which I was going to lose was the approval of my parents. At that point, I was like, wow. So my decision-making process is completely compromised by the expectations that society and especially my parents have on me. Is this the way I want to continue living? It's like, no. In that case, I have to make the decision, if for no other reason, to show myself that I can break from parental expectations. So that is the first and honestly, the absolutely unskippable, the most unskippable part of the decision-making framework is to spell out the trade-offs. Let me give that to you. So this is the framework. First step is to spell out the trade-offs. You have to do this. If you don't know what trade you're making, then you're screwing yourself, because there's always a trade-off. And if you think there isn't a trade-off, then that means that, well, you're being sold something, or you are selling yourself something. Either way, you are walking into delusion in the times where you think that there's no trade-off being made. And this is the thing. This is why a decision-making framework speeds things up for you. You might think, looking upon this, that, well, there's so many steps you gotta take to make a good decision. It's like, you'll spend way more time getting stuck in a decision and being like spinning in loops than just using a clear framework and getting the decision made and then taking action. This will speed up decision process, not slow it down. Because fear exists in the vague and indecision exists in the vague. Once you spell out your trade, once you know what you're losing, then you can decide whether you want to lose it or not, at which point you have made a decision. So I'll give you a direct example which will sear this information into your brain. So one of my community members, I was doing a group call with my boys, and one of the community members basically said, well, I understand trade-offs. I understand the core concept that there are no solutions, only trade-offs, which is a key lesson, key phrase learned from Thomas Sowell. So he said he understood this concept, but he wanted to explain this concept to his band. So like, what are you talking about? Explain. So here's what he said. And by the way, hey Philip, how you doing, man? So what Philip said was this. He said, well, he belongs to a band and he really loves the music that they make. He really loves the band and he wants to progress in the band. He wants success for the band. But the band didn't understand him because he had to miss every fourth or fifth practice session because he had other priorities in his life. He had other stuff going on and he wanted to explain to his band, well, hey, like, I really want to be here, but I have to make this trade-off, and that's why I can't be here. And he said, like, his words, not mine, that his band kind of thought of him as less committed and even childish because he wouldn't show up for some of these practice sessions. But the thing is this. So he asked me, well, how do I explain the concept of trade-off to the band? But the thing is, you don't. Because the band, like, every action that you take, you are in communication. So I told him, by not showing up to the band practice, you are communicating to the band that they are not the priority. The thing is, Philip said that he had other priorities, but you cannot have other priorities by the very definition of the word. So the word priority, what does it mean? Well, the word prior, you probably heard the word prior before. Prior means before, right? Like prior, or like primary colors, pri. So primary or prior priority, all these things are referring to the fact that what is considered your priority is the first thing that you do. First. So the thing is, if Philip says that he has multiple priorities, then it just means that he hasn't taken the time to organize his priorities properly. And if you think that you have multiple priorities, well, the same thing for you and also for myself. So this is where indecision comes from. This is an example where a person does not see that the trade-offs that he's making. So I asked him, well, what if I put a gun to your head and I said, hey, Philip, if you miss another practice, then I'm going to put a bullet through your brain. Well, would his behavior change? Of course it would change, because now I've changed the priorities. Of course, everybody's highest priority is their own life. So by making this hypothetical situation, I was able to prove to Philip that, well, I can use an external circumstance for this, in this case, a firearm, to just change the priority list. And suddenly, he's not missing practice. And suddenly, his bandmates would no longer see him as childish or immature or non-committal. So this is the thing. Your behaviors always speak louder than your words do. And the thing is, like, Philip said that, well, he had other priorities. Like, okay, in that case, the trade-off that you're going to make, and you are making, is the respect of your band. And if you don't want to make this trade-off, then you have to make different trade-offs. That's all it is. You can't have everything. You can have anything, but you can't have everything. So if you want the respect of your band, well, you can only earn it through showing up. And if you want to show up, well, you're going to disappoint somebody else. That's the thing. So you can't get the approval of, or you can't get the respect of, or you can't get the commitment of everybody you interact with. Some people will, again, take priority. And in this case, Philip was saying, well, the band wasn't the priority through his actions, not his words. The second part of this framework I learned because, again, by doing, is when I was deciding whether I should quit my full-time engineering job to do YouTube instead. So essentially, this is the classic example, like career or entrepreneurship. And I will explain how to think through this, because there's not always a clear and correct answer. And I'm not one of those people who is like, well, entrepreneurship, everybody should be an entrepreneur. I've never thought this, and I think that's a stupid way to think. There is a correct answer. It's just that you must evaluate it for yourself using reason and not emotion, because you will be let down if you use emotion for something like this. And by the way, just put a pin on this, which is so you know how some people say, like, trust your gut? Of course, that is a critical part. I will explain. I will show you where to use trust your gut and where to use a logical framework like this one. So have no fear, like, all those answers will be forthcoming. So when I was making this decision of whether I should pursue entrepreneurship or continue with my career, I want you to understand what I was missing out on, what the trade-off was. So I had the actual dream job. You know how people say, like, they want to do YouTube because they want to travel the world and make money and have time freedom and, like, all this stuff. I already had all of this. I had all of this. I was working for a startup, so I was in direct communication with the CEO. I had fair amount of control over marketing and some say in engineering even. I had a good salary, and here's the crazy part. In the contract agreement which I had signed, I was vested into the company. I was vesting into the company. What that means is, if I did 1 year, I would get shares in the company. If I do 2 years, I would get even more shares in the company, and so on. So this was a really cool startup. So there was massive upside potential as well. If I just kept my job in that position, or even got a promotion, I would get more and more shares, so that when the company eventually doesn't exit, I could have exited a multi-millionaire potentially. So that was the trade-off. So when I was looking at the trade-off step of this decision-making framework, I was like, okay, on one side you have this YouTube thing, this entrepreneurship thing, like, I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what the earning potential here is. But on the other side, I have this clear, amazing business, which I do enjoy, I do love. I already have geographical freedom. I'm not on the clock. So long as I get my stuff done, I get paid. And I have this upside potential of earning shares and then selling those shares. So I was like, well, I shouldn't quit. Like, I should just stay with my job. And I would have, but there's more steps to it. There's more to the decision making than just the trade-offs. The second thing which you want to analyze when you're making a decision is reversal costs. So let me write that down. Reversal, REVERSALCOSTS. So the second thing you want to look at is reversal costs. So I asked myself, well, if I leave this dream job and then I pursued entrepreneurship, I pursued YouTube, well, could I reverse that decision? And the answer was, well, yeah, it just has a reversal cost. And this is a key point, boys. So most decisions in life are not irreversible. Of course, there are some irreversible decisions, of course, but most times it seems irreversible. It's just that there's a cost which you haven't spelled out. I'll give you an extreme example, and I think you won't like this example, but it is the fact. Like even a decision which is so hard to reverse, like marriage. Marriage is an emotional decision, it is a financial decision, it is a legal decision, a decision that is made in front of God. But technically speaking, this is a decision that you can reverse. It's just that it has costs. And if you're willing to pay those costs, then this is technically a decision that you can reverse. So even a decision that is so big, technically can be reversed. Only death cannot be reversed. So the question is, when we're making smaller decisions in life, like should I quit my job to pursue entrepreneurship? Should I quit entrepreneurship to pursue a new job? Should I buy software A or software B? Should I do like all these different things? It's like, brother, just calculate the reversal costs. And then you know, then there's no fear. Then you know what it costs to go back on your decision. And and honestly, like once you spell it out, it becomes less scary for you, and then you can make that leap. That's it. That's what reversal cost is for. It's to understand what it takes to go back if you had to. All right. So once I realized, well, you know, I could quit my job, pursue entrepreneurship, and if it didn't work out for me, if entrepreneurship wasn't the path I wanted to take, well, what's the worst that could happen? I could just, try to go back to the same job that I already had, or get a similar engineering job. The thing is, I have done it once before, so I could probably do it again. So the reversal cost wasn't actually huge. I could quit my job and it would not be the end of me. So that gave me the confidence to go to the next step. The next step is, glad you asked, it is ANALYSE, I think that's how you spell it, analyze risks. Analyze risks, boys and girls. So we talked about trade-offs, we talked about reversal costs. Analyze risk is when you look at what is the maximum possible potential upside and what is the maximum possible potential downside. So you understand the range of the potentials that you are working with. So I'll give you examples to drive this home. So let's do extreme examples to drive this home. Every single day this happens. Imagine you go to a bar and you meet a girl and she's kind of into you, you have some drinks, and you ask her, do you want to go home? And she says yes. And you're like, all right, let's do this, let's go home. And what do? You grab your car keys, you go to the parking lot, get into your car, and start driving intoxicated. What is the maximum potential upside of taking this risk? Well, you could reach home safe and sound and you have a great night. And you saved about $10, maybe $20, maybe $50 on your Uber bill. That is what you saved by making the decision to drive intoxicated. Okay, so that's a very capped upside. Got it. What is the downside of making this decision? What is the worst thing that can happen? And in this case, well, there is a catastrophic downside. There is unmitigated and catastrophic and irreversible downside. Because not only could you get yourself killed, well, you could also get somebody else killed. So you have maximal downside and very capped upside, like $20. So, and yet people make this decision all the time. And this is what alcohol does to you, is alcohol changes your risk preferences and causes you to make stupid decisions and stupid bets. Alcohol has a direct impact on this trail framework. It's specifically in the analyze risk part of this. And that is why we all will agree that driving drunk is stupid. But the thing is, I'll give you another example and you'll be like, okay, I'm not that logical myself. Well, here's the thing. Let's talk about this. Like, let's go to a grocery store. You're in a grocery store and you're doing your thing, you're grabbing your potatoes, whatever. And you see a girl who is looking in your direction. And you think maybe she's looking at you, you're not sure. but she's attractive and you're interested in speaking to her. Well, what's the worst that can happen? What is the downside? Well, the worst thing that can happen is you go and talk to her. She's not interested. She says she has a boyfriend and she goes about her life, and then you go about your life. Maybe you don't feel that good about yourself for that day, but like, what's the worst thing that can happen? You just feel bad. Like, okay. What's the best thing that can happen? Well, the best thing that can happen, we actually have kind of an uncapped upside. What I mean by that is, if we consider death to be catastrophic downside, like maximal downside, then, well, technically speaking, you could meet a girl in a grocery store, you could end up dating, you could end up getting married, and you could end up becoming a father, thereby bringing new life into the world. That is, if we say that death is maximal downside, then bringing new life is maximal upside. So here we have another asymmetric bet. We have the downside being, well, you get embarrassed a little bit, like, okay. But the upside is uncapped. And yet we have this primal fear of opening a conversation with a stranger. Like, what's going on? Like, according to risk analysis, this shouldn't be something that scares you, but it is. So now you're like, oh yeah, it's too easy to make fun of the drunk driver being stupid. But then there's, of course, examples in our own life where our own decision process is compromised. So that is how you analyze risks, boys and girls. And here too, I'll go back to the previous example which I gave, which was like, I'll give you this. I'll give you this important information. If you have parents who will put a roof above your head, give you clothes to wear, and give you food to eat, and you won't die, well, you have already won at life. Like, real talk. If you have parents which will give you the basic sustainment for life, you have already won, because you can take a lot of risk. You have the safety net. You can take a lot of risk. So this is what I thought. I was like, okay, I can quit my engineering job, and I know for a fact my parents are going to be highly disapproving of this. They're going to be like, what are you doing? You already threw away your academic progress by joining the military. Now you're throwing away your engineering progress and your stocks and all this stuff by going into YouTube. Like, YouTube may not work, all this stuff. But the thing is, like, they can say all that, right? But they're not gonna kick me out of the house. Like, I know this. They're still gonna feed me. So like this might sound selfish, right? But it is actually the case. Like, if you have parents who will let you live, right? If you have parents who will not let you die, then you can take all kinds of risks. So I was like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I don't die. Let's say the YouTube thing doesn't work out. Entrepreneurship isn't for me. I can maybe spin my wheels for a whole year and I make $0. Like, I still won't die. So, like, what's stopping me? And so the risk analysis, like, of course, entrepreneurship has massive upside. I don't even need to say it. You already know it. But the downside was capped because my parents would not let me die. And that's how I did my risk analysis. All right. So now we go to the fourth point. Now we're going to get super tactical, boys. So fourth point is, once I started my entrepreneurship journey, I had what's called a gray swan event. So a gray swan, okay, well, it's related, right? It's related to risk analysis. A gray swan event, I guess I gotta say what's a black swan event. So black swan event is an event that is so unprecedented that you could not have possibly foreseen it. For example, like right now, I'm just sitting here, talking to the camera, but I could just die. Like, a lightning strike could happen out of nowhere and I could just die. That would be a example of a black swan event. I guess more realistic, considering that there's a beach right next to me. Maybe a tsunami can happen, I guess, get washed away. That could be a black swan event, just unexpected, massive catastrophic risk. And you can't really mitigate against it because, like, you don't even know what's coming. That's massive black swan events. But of course, you could have massive upside as well. Like, if you win a lottery or something, that's a black swan event as well, because it's completely unpredictable. And that's like massive events which are unpredictable are called black swan. Gray swan is an event that you can bias to happening. So when I started on YouTube, most people don't know this, but there's like 100 minutes of content that I produce on a separate channel, not Carl's Kitchen, which that channel is completely hidden because, well, I felt like the videos were not that great. So I made hundreds of videos, with hundreds of minutes of videos before I started this channel. And then even on this channel, there's many videos before what's made public on my channel, which I made, which was just me practicing and trying to get better at my craft. Many videos were made. They're not public right now. But the thing is, as I was making these videos, I was getting better and better. And the first video that got any kind of traction was a video that I made about the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene's book. In my view, Robert Greene's book, 48 Laws of Power, is ass. And anybody who reads it and follows it is destined for a very difficult life. So either way, that's an aside. As I was getting better, I made this one video called Hamza Fired Me, I Was His Thinker, which was true. That video, in a month, got 400,000 views. Like, that's a Grace One event. It wasn't that it was completely unpredictable. You know, as you're making videos, as you're getting better and better, the chance of making a banger video does go up every step. So it's not unpredictable, but you never know which video is going to be. So it's a Grace One event. So when that happened, I was like, well, you know, YouTube becomes a much more viable path because now I have a small audience and I can use that small audience to grow my channel. So that's where the analyze risk steps came in. So once I created the channel and I have an audience which wants to listen to the things which I have to say, my personal insights and so on, it's like, well, I need to live, like I need to pay rent, I need to eat, so I need to have some kind of monetization system. And I had one decision here and two choices here. One was to monetize using a platform called Circle, and the other was to monetize using a platform called School. Both of them are community management softwares or websites. And I will show you this example because it's very tactical, and this is a lot of decision making does fall into this bucket. So things like, should I quit my career and all this, it's quite an emotional decision, right? But sometimes it's just like, which iPhone should I buy, or which software should I take? And there's like, this is a key decision making component, especially if you own a business. You have to make a lot of decisions like, I have software A and B, software B has X features, software A has Y features, this costs this much, this costs this much, like how do I make a call? And of course, like whether you own a business or not, you're oftentimes making choices, and this is where a lot of like, I don't know, YouTubers or whatever will tell you to make a pros and cons list. Like make a pros and cons list, compare the pros and cons, and suddenly you can make a decision. It's like, that's not how it works. And this is what I did, right? I had Circle, which, to be clear, like, and I'll still stand by this, is Circle is objectively a better community software than School is for the business owner's perspective. So I actually like, where is this going? Like, is this about School or Circle? Like, trust me, I will explain this and it'll never leave your mind. So Circle has integrations, it has payment plans, it has all these enterprise grade features which are amazing for the business owner. Like it is hands down better than School. All right, but School also had some features which Circle didn't have. For example, School had leaderboards. School was like, the color scheme of School was a little bit nicer, and there were some benefits of using School over Circle as well. So I did the pros and cons list, but I didn't really get anywhere. And so I was stuck in this loop for a long time. In fact, if you're in KCC, or if you're a long-term member of my channel, you've heard of KCC. KCC is the first community that I ever created. It's a banger. And I actually did a pre-release of KCC first. I was like, hey guys, I'm launching this community. It's going to be called KCC. And if you want to sign up, here's the link, like all this stuff. And then I didn't release the community for like 2 or 3 months. And if you're like, why did that happen? Why is that delay? It's because I was delayed from making the decision for months because I couldn't make my decision whether I should host the community on School or Circle. So if you're in KCC, well, now you know why the delay was made. This was what's going on in the background. So it's like I needed a tiebreaker, and that's where the I of this framework comes in, which is info gathering. INFOGATHERING, information gathering. All right. So let me explain this. So the pros and cons list will only get you so far, but before you know it, you'll get stuck and you don't know how to compare the pros and cons because you don't know which pros and which cons matter the most. And this is where the concept of unknown unknowns comes in. Like sometimes when you're making a decision, you just don't know what you don't know. And this is what sometimes will absolutely get you. Like, what's the use of making a pros and cons list if there's a pro which you don't know about or a severe con that you don't know about? So that's the thing. You just don't know what you don't know. And what you got to do to, and of course, this is the place where people get stuck because they'll do endless research. And this is what I did as well. So I started a free trial on School. I started a free trial on Circle. I made communities on both and tested them, and like I wasn't getting anywhere. And the pros and cons list failed me. So at that point, I was like, okay, I need to do something else. And I consulted and paid for a coaching call with an expert, and his name was Victor. And I am so happy that I was able to speak to somebody who knew what they're doing, who was already a community managing expert. And Victor told me one piece of information which just made the whole process easy. What he said was, well, you've made the pros and cons list, you've tested both community softwares using the business account, like the business and the admin account. Have you tested them using the user account? Like, have you tested the user experience? I was like, no, I haven't done that. And I felt stupid because it's like, if you're making a product, you want the product to be good. And of course the user's point of view matters more than your point of view. But I just didn't know. This was like years ago, right? I didn't know. And this is the thing, it's an unknown unknown. So then I was like, okay, got it. So I know what the tiebreaker is going to be. Like, whichever software has better user experience, so I'm going to go with that one. And so I created user accounts, and I joined a school group, and I joined a circle group, and then it's like, okay, I get it. Like, school is better. School is easier to use, and circle is complicated to use. And if I was a user, then I don't care about the integrations. I don't care about the whole like payment processing bullshit things which happen on the admin side. I just care about, am I having fun or not? Or am I getting value or not? So I was like, okay, got it. So I chose school and haven't looked back since, and it's been an awesome decision. And yes, there are some compromises and trade-off that I'm making by being on school rather than circle, but I stand by my decision because school is still an objectively better platform for the user point of view. And that was an unknown unknown that became a known unknown because an expert pointed it out to me, at which point I could go out and gather information gathering. I could go out and gather the information which would break the tie. So now you see how this will speed up your decision-making process. Still leaves us with L, one final component, which will make you that much better at decision-making. All right, give me a sec. Yes. So, remember I said earlier in this video that I'm going to tell you, like, trust your gut. Like, when should you trust your gut? So this comes down to grain. You're like, where is this going? Like, trust me, I'll bring it back. So humans didn't have grain. Like, when I say grain, I mean like rice or wheat or barley or like grains, right? Cereal. Humans didn't have grain for the longest time. Humans ate fruit. Humans ate meat. But grain was new because grain had to be essentially found, cultivated, improved before it could be viable as a calorie source. So before grain, well, how could you store food? You could store like meat for all of 2 days, right? Like meat, especially in a warm climate, meat will go bad in like 2 days, 3 days. Nuts could stay for a couple months for sure. Then we had fruit. Fruit will go back in like a week max. Berries are a little bit better. Berries can last for a couple, like even it's in days, right? Like all these food sources that will last you days. Now, of course, you can have salting, you can have preservation techniques, but these came later. And of course, salt wasn't even available to most of human civilizations. But regardless, we're getting off track. My point being that we didn't have the ability to store food for a vast part of human history. So our decision-making process did not account for time preference. Like in our hunter-gatherer past, there was no point in waiting for a long time to store or to consume our food. But once you had grain, the calculus changed because grain, well, you can plant your grain. You can take the grain that's produced by your newly planted grain and store that for the next year. You store that for the next year. So suddenly you're making decisions that span years or even decades. With fruit and meat, well, you can't really store that for years or decades. And so the human mind began to change. The way we make decisions, or rather the nature of the decisions themselves started to change. So where am I going with this? There are some decisions that humans are very good at and have been doing for millions of years. For example, character judgment. Now this is a key one, boys. So this is like one of those examples where you should absolutely trust your gut more so than this framework. Like legit. So if you meet somebody and they just give you kind of a shifty vibe, right? You like them logically speaking, but there is something about them that you don't trust. Like you meet a girl, she's beautiful, she says all the right things, she's just your type, she smiles good and everything. But there's something which is triggering some kind of negative emotion in you, or the things you should absolutely trust that. Or even if you're making a friend, you meet somebody in a party, and you like the things which he's saying, you like his values, whatever. But there's something off. Well, you should trust your gut. Even when you're watching a video on YouTube, I'll give you examples. Iman Gadji and what's his name, Luke Belmar. Like, I came across their content many years ago, and like, as soon as I saw their content, I was like, logically speaking, I agree with the things which they're saying on camera, but there's something about their facial expressions, micro expressions, like whatever you want. There's something about these guys which just rubbed me the wrong way, and I just couldn't trust these guys. And of course, fast forward to today, and both of these, I was going to say gentlemen, I will just say men, have been exposed for certain, for not being 100% honest with their financial dealings. I'll just say that. So, same for even Andrew Tate. Like, so many people followed Andrew Tate, but I always like felt there was something off about him, or I always felt like he was a shark. I didn't think that Andrew Tate was necessarily shifty in the way that Luke Belmar or Iman Gadji was, but I always felt like he was a shark. Like, he was there to get his bag, and like all the teens who like believed him and trusted him, and he was their savior. I always felt like he didn't actually give a shit about these his followers. So he was a shark. He was not a shifty boy, but he was a shark. So sometimes you can just tell. You can just tell, like, on a split-second decision making, like the nature of somebody. And I think that you should trust these things. Gut instinct does work for these, because this is a kind of decision which our ancestors would have made millions of years ago. So what's the L in this framework, right? L is location. I'll explain what I mean. So remember I said that the hunter-gatherer past has an effect on our decision making. Well, the thing is, we are not computers, right? We're not computers. We are a biological entity which has a biological brain, which is where this decision making is coming from. And the thing is, all animals make decisions as well. Animals make decisions based on purely emotions, right? I mean, animals make fight or flight responses, or mating or not mating preferences. All these come from emotional, how do you say it? Like sparks in the brain for all animals. But humans, of course, are at the precipice. Humans are at the precipice of using logic and using emotion. And to be clear, I'm not saying logic is better than emotion or emotion is better than logic. I just gave you examples where emotion is better than logic. For example, seeing like who's trying to cheat you or something. That is an emotional decision, and it's quite reliable compared to even logic. So I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I am saying that we do both. And so the question becomes, like, what type of decision are you making? So for example, I'll give you the counter example. So investment, right? Investment in stocks or bonds, crypto, whatever. If you ask Warren Buffett, what's the best investment strategy? What he says is, well, the best investment strategy is to buy low and sell high. It's like, okay, got it. But the thing is, most people don't do this. Most people most people buy high and sell low, because when the stock market is going down, they panic and they sell and they lock in their losses. And I lost my marker. Give me a sec. So when the stock market is having a great bull run, they get greedy and they throw all their money into it. And before you know it, they're just making losses year after year, and they're not even beating the market. And so most people are emotional investors. Terrible idea. Don't be an emotional investor. When it comes to investment, well, obviously that is a decision-making tree that is very, very, very different from anything that our hunter-gatherer past would have ever seen or experienced. And so we're not, like, our mind isn't evolved for that kind of decision-making. And so in those kinds of things, this framework becomes very important. Or when you're talking about, like, career changing, like, should I quit my job to follow entrepreneurship? It's like, that's a decision which our hunter-gatherer past would have never made, because so long as you were a hunter-gatherer, you kind of low-key just did what you had to do to survive. There was no choices. Like, if your father was a hunter, guess what you're going to be. If your father was a farmer, guess what you're going to be. If your father was a blacksmith, guess what you're going to be. There was no concept of quitting the job to follow entrepreneurship. That is a modern decision. Like, that has no precedence in history. And you even, like, mate choice, like choosing a girl, right? In most of human history, like, your village had like all of 15 girls, and like 10 of them didn't look that good, so you had all of 5. And then you didn't, like, what I'm trying to say is, you didn't have that much choice. And so the decisions, like the structure of your decisions were different. And this comes all the way down to our framework right now because, well, we still live in a biological entity, our bodies. And our bodies make decisions modulated by, well, the neurotransmitters in our brain and all this. For example, if you're hungry, even if you follow this framework, you're still going to make an illogical decision because hunger raises cortisol, and cortisol increases the way you see risks. You overestimate your risks, and that throws off your analysis of risks, and it throws off your entire framework. If you're not sleeping properly, if you're waking up tired as shit, then you're not going to make a good decision because, again, your cortisol has spiked and you are in a kind of a flight or fight response mode. You're under chronic stress, and people make different decisions when they're stressed. So the location matters, like the location as in where you are in life, like are you stressed or not? And also physical location, as in, so if you're making important decisions in your home or office or classroom or where the places where you spend most of your time, then you have these ghosts of decisions past, which are always clouding your judgment. But the thing is, if you want to make a clear and new decision, you don't want to be influenced by the past decisions. So when you're making a big decision, I would strongly suggest stepping out. Like, don't make your big decisions in the same place where you make other decisions. Like, step out. This is why, like, a lot of people take vacations and find it to be very productive. Because if you, like, to be clear, I'm not saying you need to take a whole ass vacation to make a decision. I'm just saying that many times people do make decisions on vacations because it gives them the detachment required to make the call. So you can literally just do this. If you have a decision to make and you want to run through the framework, don't do it at home. Just go to the nearest Starbucks or some shit, like go to your library and make your decision there. Like do this process in an external location. That will help you get more mental clarity. And there we go. So that is the end of our trail framework. I'll leave you with this important point though. A decision-making framework is like a machine. This is a machine. This is a decision-making machine. This means two things. As you use the framework more, you're going to get better because your pattern recognition software is going to kick in, and you're just going to get faster and better at making decisions. But also, it's like a machine. So there's no machine which produces correct results every time. It just doesn't exist. So let me be very clear with what I'm trying to say here. You could use this framework and come to the wrong decision. Absolutely. For example, I said that I chose school over circle because of the user experience. Okay? But let's say that this might be a crazy example, but I'll give you an extreme example to drive this home, right? So let's say I chose school and I had a community on school and it was going great and it was awesome. But then a asteroid just struck the school headquarters and like the entire school staff was wiped out. Like, I know, but like it can happen, right? So the thing is, would I be wrong? Would I have made the wrong decision? Should I say then, oh man, I should have chosen circle because the asteroid struck the school headquarters? It's like, no. I can't be sat here consulting astrological charts to make every single decision. Of course not. So what I'm trying to say here is you can do everything right and still be wrong. And that's okay. You can do everything right and still be wrong, and that's okay because you're still alive. So long as you're alive, the game is still going on. The game is still on, the game is afoot, and you can just make the next decision a better decision. A bad decision does not end your life. A good decision does not make your life. Like, these are stepping stones on a path. This is your journey. Your journey is made by hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of decisions. But remember what I said at the start of this video. We all make decisions, but in the end, it is our decisions that make us.